I've got nothing. I'm going to start off by showing you this. Hello and welcome to today's video. So in today's video, I'm going to be giving you some useful advice or tips that I picked up during my PGCE year when it comes towards planning. So I'm going to first off say that a lot of what I learned about effective planning, I actually learned during my PGCE year during my second placement. And my mentor, I cannot thank enough, because the way that he explained how he plans things has really helped me. Even now, I use those skills and it saves so much of my time. So I don't know about you, but have you ever come to start planning something and this is what you've experienced? Yeah. Me too. I think that when you first come towards planning lessons, or more so schemes, it's kind of like, so where do I start? Or it might be that you know the topic that you're going to teach, but you've just got no idea, where do I start? Where do I end? How many lessons do I need? How much time is it going to take? And it can be really, really daunting. So I'm going to go through my advice and my top tips towards how I save time towards my planning. So let's get straight into it. You've probably got by now your topic or your theme for the scheme of learning that you are going to be teaching. I'm using the word scheme, and a lot of people might even be watching this saying, what is a scheme? A scheme is kind of a length of learning that you're going to do that's based around a common topic or a common concept. So schemes can last for a few weeks, a month, or even longer. It depends the scheme that you are teaching. So I'll just give a brief example. So one scheme might be that it might last for 4 weeks, and it might be, I'm trying to think of something off the top of my head here that I would teach within a month. So one scheme might be murder mystery, for example. I don't know. So it's kind of a theme, it's going to be a topic that I'm going to be exploring for 4 weeks' time. However, another scheme that might last a lot longer, so for example, for GCSE classes, might be a component within the written exam, might last a lot longer. It very much depends upon, basically the scheme is the title of the topic that you're going to be teaching. That's probably the poorest explanation I've ever given when it comes towards a scheme. A scheme is basically a lengthy amount of planning that it links from one another. So your lesson plans will link towards the bigger picture. Scheme, bigger picture, same thing. Anyway, so you've probably got your title, your theme, and you kind of have an idea of what you're going to be focusing on for your scheme of work. And then you sat there like, so where do I start? Or you might be thinking about, oh, this is where I start, and you start creating your lessons, and then you realise, oh, wait a minute, did I start in the right place? Have I counted enough time? Don't get me wrong, that I'm not saying that every scheme that I create, that I get it correct 100%. I do have to adapt, but I think having the framework there could just save so much time in the future. So I'm going to kind of talk through now how I plan a scheme. I'm going to start off by showing you this. So this is what it looks like. So you can see that you've got, I've just called it scheme, I've got boxes, I've got outcome, skills and prior knowledge, and I'm going to talk through this model. Within this model, this is how I learnt to plan my schemes, and it saves me a lot of time. So I'm going to kind of talk you way through it, what it means and how I use it. So this is kind of a template. So when I'm note forming a scheme, this is what I start off with before I do it into more of an official document. Title of the scheme goes there. You don't have to do it in this layout, but this is the way that it helps my thought process. Before I even think about what are the lessons going to be within the scheme, I think about these 3 things. So I think about essentially what is going to be the outcome of the scheme. So by the end of this scheme, what do I want pupils to walk away with? What is the bigger picture? What are the bigger links here? So say, for example, if you're creating a scheme and there's 10 things that you want them to know for that topic. That's your outcome, that they'll be able to walk away and have the base knowledge of those 10 things. Say, for example, if it's an outcome for a written exam, they know how to answer a 10-mark question. You will know what you want the outcome to be. You know, hopefully, what's the point? The outcome is the purpose. What is the purpose? What are the pupils going to get by the end of that scheme? The skills. So the skills can be kind of the breaking down the outcomes, so the little things that they're going to learn along the way. So you might see this as the outcome is, the scheme might be a long scheme, so it might be preparing pupils for a written exam. So the outcome will be obviously that they've made progression with their answers. They've learned how to structure this. The skills might be, for example, that they understand the formula in the way that they have to write a paragraph, that they are able to confidently use keywords. So skills and outcome are very similar, but it might help you to break them down into those two different things. I tend to now just use more outcomes, but when I was first planning, I used skills as well. And the last thing to perhaps consider is, what is the prior knowledge that the pupils know of? This is very important when you are perhaps doing a scheme that is a development of something they've done previously. So for example, like I've said, I'm a secondary teacher. When I go into year 11 with my classes, I know that some of the schemes, for example, for the written exam, they will have touched upon in year 10. So I've got to be aware of what is their knowledge before, in order for the planning to be effective. There's no point repeating something in the exact same way. You might need to do a refresher, but it's thinking about what the pupils need at that moment in time. And if you've never taught the pupils before, or you don't know, that's also something to perhaps consider within your first few lessons. So when you've got all these things down the right hand side, then you go towards looking at your boxes. So the boxes can be, you can see it in these two different ways. So the boxes might be, for example, you've got your outcomes, you've got your skills. I personally break this down into the following. By the end, so the last square, usually I have some form of an assessment to kind of solidify for myself what they've learned and the progress that they should have made. That comes at the end. So at the end of my assessment, what am I going to test them on, essentially, because within every scheme you would say there is usually an assessment, whether it's formal or informal. So if I'm expecting them to know everything here, I'm going to be testing them on it. It might be 10 different things I'm going to be testing them on. I've got to go, okay, I've got to fit those 10 different things into these different boxes. So that could be the way that you structure your lessons. So it might be, it's very much dependent upon the subject. You might say to yourself, oh, those 10 things, each one can be taught roughly in a lesson. So I've got 10 lessons, the assessment, 11 lessons done, that's my scheme. Bang. But it might not be as simple as that. It might be that there's 10 concepts you're going to test them on by the end of that scheme, but you know that these concepts, one concept might take 2 lessons, but another concept might only take 1. This is where I think planning, effective planning, is executed well when you really know and understand what you're going to be teaching. I know that might put pressure on people, but I know for myself that in my PGCE year, I overthought it too much because I didn't see it in the sense of what is the outcome going to be and how long will things take. So this is not saying that you might account, for example, for one concept to take 3 lessons and it might take more, but this is only a framework. I think planning very much comes down to having a framework, but you adapting from it and reading into the learners. But this is somewhat of a framework. So I personally, the way I now do it is that I have the outcome in the last box, and then I think about, based on the prior knowledge, where I'm going to start off from. I think it's a lot easier when it comes towards planning schemes to plan either backwards. So you think about the short terms, the steps they're going to take backwards, or if you maybe have sometimes I even now prefer to do an end and a start. The reason why I say backwards is that sometimes I always go, where do I want them to start? Whereas if I kind of work on it backwards, scaffold it backwards, I go, okay, that seems like an appropriate place to start for their learning. But when you feel more confident, you might find it, oh, actually, I know the start, I know the end, now I'm going to kind of fill in the gap. And it doesn't always have to be linear. I think people think with schemes sometimes that there's always going to be kind of this, it's always going to be like this, I don't know, like a natural straight line in that way, like it's always going to flow. Yes, a scheme should flow, but it's not like, I think, yes, effective schemes, kind of the chunks add on together, so they build their knowledge up along the way, that's not what I'm saying, but it doesn't have to get bigger every single lesson. You know what you're going to be teaching. This formula is just there to kind of maybe structure your thoughts, which really helped me. So this kind of helped this way of thinking, and it doesn't mean that every box is a lesson. It could be for you that it's a lesson because that's how long the topic might take. But I used to do it as topics within the big scheme of learning, so kind of the subtopics, and then for each subtopic, then breaking it down into what I'm going to teach within the subtopic, so how long it's going to take, if that makes sense. I think the one thing when it comes towards schemes of learning is having a framework there, and also one of the things that I did when I was creating schemes is that actually I kind of I thought about all my activities for all those lessons. So when it came towards teaching, I'd got everything there. That's the big thing I'll say about schemes and lesson plans that has saved me a lot of time, is that if you can be forward thinking and creative and plan in advance, it saves you a lot of time. But planning effectively is about adapting and meeting the needs of the pupils in front of you. So the reason why I have said this is only a framework is that it is only a framework. It's there for kind of you to know where the pieces are going to be. You know the path. Doesn't mean that it doesn't mean that it's going to go perfectly towards this. Sometimes, you might have to take a step backwards in your plan. It might be that, a subtopic takes longer, but as long as you know the skeleton of the scheme and the bigger journey, you'll find things a lot easier, hopefully. It did for me. I think seeing things as, if you know the journey and you know the skeleton, you're fine. I think the problem I found when it first came towards planning is that I didn't know where the end was going to be. And I was kind of in my scheme creating these lessons, and I thought, where is it going? Where is this scheme actually going? So having that framework there or something like that might save you a lot of time. So I hope you've enjoyed today's video. If you found any of this useful, or you have any questions about the formula or things that I haven't made that clear, please feel free to comment below and I'll try to get back to you as soon as I can. I know that this might not be a perfect formula for everyone, but I know maybe starting off, it might be a useful tool to consider with thinking about the journey in the bigger pictures of style of schemes that you might have to create, or even as an NQT. I hope you've enjoyed today's video and I will see you next time. Goodbye.